Alright, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Tokenicer and I'm here to bring you guys in-depth analysis, news, and insights on the digital asset space, along with covering the progressive tokenization of the world. If you haven't already, follow the Twitter for more updates and analysis, and check out the Medium for some articles of deep dives on fundamentals. Today, we're going to be going over a Layer 1 crypto project in the space that's looking to completely reinvent the way we access this digital world and really make this digital asset ecosystem something that's easily accessible to everyone. But unlike most of these other public Layer 1s, their approach at decentralization is a little bit different. One that relies on trust in a different sense, which we'll get deeper into. But this Layer 1 is built as a third-generation blockchain in which it's built to be scalable and secure for real-world adoption. Whether it be in business, healthcare, identity, or whatever. In fact, it's the Layer 1 with the most amount of total transactions, now totaling in at over 1 billion. So what could possibly be such a unique Layer 1? Well, before I tell you guys that, I just gotta first let y'all know I'm not a financial advisor, and therefore nothing you ever hear or read from me should ever be taken as any form of financial or investment advice. But now that we got that out of the way, let's get right into it. So the project we're going to be breaking down today is Hedera Hashgraph. And what makes them so unique compared to anything else in this crypto space is their governing council. So most of these crypto networks are either centralized or decentralized. If they're centralized, usually it's the foundation running all the nodes with the exception of a very small amount of VCs or whatever. So take like Solana or Binance Smart Chain as an example. And if it's decentralized, it's like the whole community of the network owns it, where anyone can run a validator node on the network and help keep the network clean and secure while getting incentivized to do so. So this would be something like, say, your Ethereum or Constellation. A centralized network pretty much means, say, if someone were to attack Solana headquarters and hack all the data there, that network's pretty much fucked. It would probably go down again. Whereas a decentralized network faced with this situation would more so just lose a bit of overall computing power, but because its ownership is so distributed around the world with nodes from the community, sure, they'll take a bit of a hit when it comes to overall computation power, but they'll readjust. So Hedera kind of takes a middle ground on this with their hash graph. They're decentralized, but at the same time kind of centralized too. So what do I mean by this? Well, the validation and governance of the network is all handled by their governance council. Well, that doesn't sound so decentralized, does it? But let's take a look at their governance council. It's made up of some of the largest corporations around the world. We've got Google, IBM, LG, Boeing, Wipro, EDF, UCL, Standard Bank, and even Chainlink, and a bunch of other huge names. All right, so a bunch of centralized companies make up of their governance council. But here's the catch. All these corporations on here are all spread out around the world. We got Google and IBM being native to North America and the United States, then LG and Shinhan Bank in Korea, EDF and Deutsche in Europe, Wipro in India, Standard Bank in Africa. You guys get the point. So they're decentralized in the sense that their governance council is in fact decentralized to where all these firms each have a very similar amount of voting and staking power. And even if one or two council members decide to act maliciously, there's still about 20 other good council members. So there really isn't a single point of failure. And being spread out across every continent in the world besides Antarctica really makes it for both virtually and geologically decentralized. So it's going to be hard enough hacking into even one or two of these huge corporations at a time, let alone half of them. So it is securely decentralized in the sense that these huge corporations all have a reputation to maintain and that they'd need to be bribed a ridiculous amount of money to do something malicious. But on the other hand, one day they could all just for some reason wake up and just agree and be like, all right, fuck everything and everyone on the hash graph. We're done here. So in my eyes, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Whether you yourself think it's a pro or con is entirely up to you. I'm just here to present you guys with the information. So they're planning to keep permission and closed only to the council until they've reached about 39 council members. And then by then they do plan to let the general public community run nodes too and secure the network. One thing that separates Hedera Hashgraph from its competition is that, similar to Constellation's hypergraph, they don't use a blockchain. Rather, they use a, you probably guessed it, directed acyclic graph. So rather than validating blocks of transactions on your, say, typical layer 1 blockchain, what Hedera Hashgraph does through their consensus is inspired from something I'm sure we can all relate to: gossip. Pretty much without going down a deep technical rabbit hole, it's nodes gossiping transactions to each other, and then that spreads all across the network until it reaches finality, which usually happens in about 3 to 5 seconds. And I'm sure most of you guys can remember back from your middle school and high school days, once a gossip starts, that shit spreads like a wildfire. One person tells someone, and then they tell someone else, and that person goes and tells another 5 people, and it just goes on. So you could think of it as an exponentially growing, verifying consensus mechanism. So they don't have to rely on blocks to confirm for transactions. Instead, the nodes kind of just gossip, aka validate and check transactions, making it very suitable for fast microtransactions in the real world. And with them saying they're able to handle up to 10,000 transactions per second, but they've said they'll slowly scale it up to there when it's time, as they slowly move within their adoption cycle. And we've talked about some of the other benefits of a DAG as opposed to a blockchain. For example, scalability, since there's no longer blocks, along with less of a carbon footprint overall. So Hedera's Hashgraph is unique because of all the services it offers. So rather than just being another layer 1 blockchain supporting applications on their ecosystem, which they definitely do have, they're one of the few layer 1 projects that are building with the vision of a network for real world application at scale. So they've got 4 different services on their Hashgraph. Firstly, there's the Hedera token services. The Hedera token service pretty much lets you tokenize or just make a secure transaction of assets through their Hashgraph. Put simply, you can mint tokens and NFTs on their network at super low costs. And just like many of these deep regulated projects, they're looking to have the tokenization of assets on their platform. So they can either be natively minted on the Hashgraph through their token services, or on another network using Hedera's consensus services. So their consensus service is basically what it sounds like. By using Hedera's consensus service, apps can build their applications on one chain, say maybe Ethereum, but then have all the transactions and activity reaching consensus and timestamped on the Hashgraph as a trust layer, since remember, their counseling board is made up of some of the top level companies in the world with a reputation to protect. So some of the things these developers and enterprises can get by going through Hedera's consensus services are some things like, firstly, a very scalable, cheap, and secure network, topics and an organized consensus, fully ordered and timestamped, along with being cryptographically secured, and verifiable, tamper-proof trails and logs within their Hashgraph for auditable list of history. So this is going to be huge for some industries like supply chain, for example, where they need not only a secure consensus mechanism, along with the verification of immutable logs between each shipment. And then there's their smart contract services. This is basically what it sounds like again. It's smart contract support for their Hashgraph, where they support popular programming languages like Solidity and Viper. And in fact, these smart contracts are EVM compatible, meaning Ethereum smart contracts can be run through Hedera. Now, this ties in perfectly with the last primary service on the Hashgraph we'll be covering, and that's their file storing service. So this one's definitely a lot less exciting than the previous 3 we've mentioned, but it's still an essential part of what makes Hedera such a suitable network for enterprise adoption. And this should be pretty self-explanatory. Much like data storage companies like Dropbox and Azure, the Hashgraph will also have its own file storing services, and what really separates them as a file storage service from all these other companies is, well, it's on a directed acyclic graph with an immutable ledger and a very secure consensus mechanism, governed by some of the top companies in the world. So primarily this will be used to store documents and files like smart contract codes, identity, address books, etc. Now, we've been going on about all the enterprise and business use cases that Hedera Hashgraph offers, but let's actually go over a couple of these applications being used around the world. So the ARIA network is a network that's building for the disruption of augmented reality and the metaverse. Their exchange is basically an NFT platform that's carbon negative and has seen partnerships and backing from some retired NBA legends, along with one of Hedera's council members, IBM, one of the largest tech companies in the world, backing them. And where are these NFTs then stored? You guys probably guessed it, on the Hashgraph, where it's secured by their governing council. Then there's Safe Health Systems, a digital healthcare and medical sciences platform used by Delta Airlines, Arizona State University, and Mayo Clinic for patient data management and patient care automation. And of course, if you're going to be managing healthcare records, literally the most sensitive pieces of information out there, because once someone gets a hold of your DNA, it's over. You can't call the doctor up to change your DNA or reset your gene structure. And honestly, the medical and healthcare industry is, in my opinion, going to be one of the sectors that get completely revolutionized by DLT the most. I'm talking beyond just securing your patient data, but now you can travel across the world and easily have access to your medical records, which in today's systems is a big problem. I'm sure some of you guys can relate. Maybe you got sick while on vacation. Well, if you don't got all your medical documents handy, it's going to be a big ass headache before their medical services can even give you much of any help. And in addition to this, now you can have fully trusted and verified data and logs of updates towards each patient's statuses that's permanently recorded on the Hashgraph, that's also interoperable between their medical systems. And the last application built on Hedera we'll cover is Galaxy. And this is personally my favorite one. This is a social media based application, really with the concept of bringing social tokens and tokenized communities to mass adoption. And they're looking to do this through connecting fans closer with their favorite celebrities and really dispersing the value and power within each of these celebrities' communities. And Galaxy is actually founded by NBA guard Spencer Dinwiddie, so there's definitely some extra legitimacy and potential for a faster network effect there. But basically, it's like some of these other creator economy type projects out there, such as The Hustle from Unison's Incubator and GeoJam from Constellation's Hypergraph. And it's further connecting the fans with the creators without the need for a middleman, so there's going to be things like getting to know and talk with your favorite celeb, or sitting down for lunch with them, or maybe even pitching them your business idea. So there's probably some people wondering, why the fuck would I ever pay to have lunch with an artist or actor? Well, why are the people on OnlyFans paying to look at and talk to half-naked girls they'll likely never see? Well, a large part of that is the community aspects and incentives being distributed that have value relative to that community. All right, well, enough of that. Let's take a look at their team now. So first up, we'll start with the CEO, as usual, Mance Harmon, who is also one of the co-founders of Hedera Hashgraph, along with their chief executive officer. So before his time at Hedera, Mance started off working in the US Air Force laboratories studying machine learning and AI. Then he actually went on to serve as the course director for cybersecurity for them as well. So that's pretty big, about 5 years working for the US Air Force. And then some time at Motorola as their senior manager and co-founding a couple of his own startups, all built somewhat around cybersecurity and distributed applications. And one of these companies was Swirlds, which is actually the parent company of Hedera Hashgraph, where he was the co-founder and CEO of. They were basically looking to build a decentralized network for distributed applications. In other words, kind of like most layer ones today. And then next up, we've got Lehman Baird, the chief scientist at Hedera. And this is really where the brains in the project lies. So Lehman's actually the one who built and conceptualized the Hashgraph and its gossip consensus protocol. So Lehman started out as co-founder and CTO of Trio Security, which is actually one of the handful of companies that both Lehman and Mance helped co-found in their time together. And then Lehman also went to work on at Motorola as their director of security engineering. Then about 6 years at the US Air Force as a professor for computer sciences. So both Mance and Lehman clearly have a solid background and experience working at the highest level agencies and enterprises in the country. And honestly, I might as well have done Mance and Lehman's backgrounds together, because guess what? They both also co-founded Swirlds together, where Lehman was the chief technology officer. And then there's also Brett McDowell. He's the chair of the Hedera Council, which, as we talked about, is their governance council with Google, IBM, Deutsche, and all those other big players. So before Hedera, Brett had worked at the IEEE, or the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineering, where he was the senior program manager. And the IEEE is basically the world's largest tech-based consortia with over 400,000 members in 160 different countries. And then he spent nearly 5 years at PayPal as their senior manager and head of security. And I probably don't even have to tell you guys how big PayPal is. And then nearly 9 years at FIDO Alliance as their co-founder along with executive director. And the FIDO Alliance is basically a consortia that's working to make our world less reliant on passwords. So chair of a crypto company usually isn't something we hear, but basically what Brett does is govern over the development in applications building on Hedera while also managing their treasury. But yeah, that's kind of the core team of Hedera Hashgraph. Obviously, I didn't cover everyone on the team, but just with Mance, Lehman, and Brett's background, I'm sure you guys can see the sheer experience and expertise that these guys have in building at the enterprise grade level. Now let's talk a little bit about tokenomics. So the HBAR token is the native token on Hedera Hashgraph, and well, just like with any layer 1 token, one of its primary use cases are to pay for network fees. And well, while they do use a gossip-based consensus, it does still run on proof of stake. And well, just like any other proof of stake network, you use their native tokens to stake to secure the network, since the more of the value in the network that's being staked and locked up, the harder and more expensive it is for successful bad actors in the network. And soon, once they allow more and eventually public nodes to run on their network, they're going to allow proxy staking. So basically, even without running an HBAR node, you can stake it onto a good network supporting node. And unlike a lot of these other proof of stake networks out there where you delegate tokens to these nodes, these tokens won't be locked or bonded at all. So you can withdraw them whenever. So there's a total supply of 50 billion HBARs and a circulating supply at the moment of about 19.5 billion. So about 40% of the total supply is in circulation, and they've divided their token allocations in a pretty interesting way, where the Treasury and Ecosystem Development Foundation holds about 50% of the supply. Now, whether that's a good or bad thing long-term as an investment is, again, entirely up to you. But as of now, it does definitely make Hedera a little more centralized and more unevenly distributed across the network than most. And personally, I do think that'll change in the future. Many of these networks kind of start off centralized, so there's legitimate people with strong experience or knowledge building up these networks. And once a full ecosystem around built on top of that network, they'll eventually be nothing more than just another user of the network who just so happens to work for the company that built the now decentralized network. Personally, it's not something I've got a big problem with. It does raise a little concern for being unsure what they might do, but it also does have a higher guarantee that the network will be built up to par for a bright future. So currently, since 1, the network's only ran by the council members' nodes, and 2, the tokens aren't very evenly distributed yet, the staking on Hedera is pretty much only available to those in the council, where they all actually have a pretty even stake in each of their nodes to kind of give them all an even say and similar amounts of governance and voting rights. So to wrap it up, Hedera Hashgraph has really built their network to fit the needs of enterprises that are looking to build on a distributed ledger with their scalability and security, and while not true decentralization, the concept of their governance council would ironically probably fit some businesses out there more that don't rely on all the amounts of decentralized nodes in the network, but more so just the trust in these huge centralized giants with a reputation that they've got to protect, because they've got a lot to lose beyond maybe just lawsuits and getting kicked out of the council. But also now your stock probably tanks and now your shareholders are pissed off because of that. And then in return causes less capital for your company, and now less people trust your business because of what you did. So yeah, in the end, it's kind of a lose-lose for both parties. And these council members are huge, so you can't bribe them to do something bad on the network for like $10 million, like you could say me with a node operator for another proof of stake network. These companies are all easily worth over $10 billion each. $10 million is pocket change to them. We're already seeing some pretty cool applications with real-world use cases that are being built on their platform, like Safe Health and Galaxy. With their council board and strong connections on their team, I really think Hedera is one of those projects in the space that are just honestly too big to fail at this point. I mean, when you got Google, IBM, Deutsches, Chainlink, even Ubisoft, along with a bunch of others on your side, you make a pretty fucking good case at being a successful business. And yeah, obviously Hedera Hashgraph does quite go against what crypto stands for in being fully decentralized and anonymous. But as I keep saying, with a technology this powerful, there's going to be businesses that build applications on it that require some form of pseudo-centralized governance. But the best part is there's more than enough room in this space for both those worlds to coexist. But yeah, that's pretty much our breakdown and introduction into Hedera Hashgraph for you guys today. And as always, if you guys liked what you got from this video, remember to show some love by hitting that like and subscribe and turning that ringer on so you don't miss a thing. And consider checking me out on some of my other content platforms. You guys can always connect with me or just stay up to date through my Telegram, Twitter, and Instagram. Or if you guys want more fundamental analysis, check my Medium out for some deep dive articles. All this can be found at Tokenicer. And for those of you guys who don't want to read, I got you guys right here with a Spotify podcast at Tokenice TV. But yeah, that's pretty much everything for today. As always, remember to stay safe and keep grinding. I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.